Good morning, everybody. So today is the end of a very long week for most of us, trying to get our teachers and students online. I know that that's been my struggle this week. I have about 18 teachers. I am the area coordinator for Bastrop and Lee County in the city of LaGrange. So we have a lot of students out there and teachers out there that have never taught or learned online. So if you've had that struggle, you are not alone. But it is doable. I found out this week that my teachers really rose to the occasion. I'm not surprised. They're all good people and good teachers. So I just wanted to encourage you. And I want to share something right off the bat from LINCS. So LINCS, of course, people around the country are having the same issue, especially adult education. We don't typically teach online. So on LINCS, which is our National Professional Development Organization, there was a post, and one of the teachers that responded to it was named, let me see if I can get here, Nan, and she read all that content, and at the end she said, I appreciate your sharing your tools, but I'm still at a loss at how it might work in my situation. Does anybody else feel like that? I have all these tools, everybody's telling me about all these tools, but I'm not sure what to do with them. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of that. I just shared with her some ideas. She had been connecting with her students on WhatsApp, so I responded to her. And this was, she wrote on, the timestamps aren't right, but she wrote earlier in the week. I responded on the 21st, and by the 24th, she had conducted a fantastic class for beginning literacy ESL all on WhatsApp. And I think that's amazing. So if you get a chance to go and read what she did to make that class happen, I want to encourage you, it can be done. You can do this. If you were in the webinar on Wednesday, we're going to go over some of those pieces again, but we are going to go a little bit deeper specifically in this bullet right here. How do you plan for live online classes? By the way, when I share a PowerPoint online, I don't do the slideshow. I have found that it's better to use the editing. So all I do is hide the toolbar, and then I make this as small as possible on the left. And then it looks like a slideshow, but I have more control. I can write on it, change things more easily than I can in a slideshow. So if you're using a PowerPoint and sharing it with your class, that's just a tip. It makes it a little bit easier to manipulate things while you're in the class. So the most important thing I'm going to say is that you need, if you've not done this before, if you have not taught online, start slow. Get used to the tools, the main tools that you have to use, specifically whatever platform you're using and what is available within that platform. And then after you get comfortable with those, you can add some of the things that I'm going to show you later on. So if you are brand new to teaching online, I do want you to just take a breath, inhale, exhale, and trust that, just like our learners, you're capable of learning something new and making it work. So let's talk about how do you get online. Are you going to meet by web conference? That's one option. So there's a lot of web conference tools out there. I prefer Zoom because the free version has breakout rooms. That is the primary advantage for me. And unfortunately, the free version typically has a 40-minute limit, but they are waiving that right now. So if you get a free Zoom for the next 60 days, that 40-minute limit is waived, and you'll be able to conduct your class with however many students you want to conduct it. But all of them, and I also find it's easier for students to get in and out of, but all of them are good options. And the most important thing is for you to try out what works. If your organization isn't making a determination of we're all going to use this particular platform, then try out what works. One thing I found this week on Zoom is my students had a little difficulty with the text instructions. Even if they were in English or Spanish, it didn't matter. So something I did, I had created a page for our online classes here, and I added a screencast from my document camera of how to get on Zoom on the phone, because most of my students are getting there on the phone. So I just walked through how I got on the phone. I'm going to demonstrate something on your phone. So I'm going to open the Zoom app, and then I'm going to join a meeting. Okay, so I'm not going to show the whole video, but I just wanted you to know that you may have to do something like that for your platform. And I should also show that because most of our students are join a meeting Spanish speakers, we also added subtitles in Spanish for them. Okay. And then there are other options. Somebody asked yesterday about telephone conferencing. That is an option, and there are some free telephone conferencing sites out there if you don't have your own conference line. The disadvantage to that is the math and the low literacy ESL that needs more support. So low literacy ESL, they need to see things, so text only can be a little difficult, or talking on the phone only can be a little difficult, rather. For math, I don't know about you, but even as a teacher, I need to see the process of doing the math steps to be able to make it work for me. So those two are hard to do by phone conference, but you can do them on WhatsApp, Twitter, or a Facebook group without much problem. Because in WhatsApp, which is encrypted end-to-end, so it's FERPA compliant, you can actually do just about everything. Show step-by-step by taking little screenshots on your phone, or send video, send audio, send homework, just about everything in WhatsApp you can do that. Facebook groups is not as compliant, so you have to be more careful about what you share in that group. And of course, Twitter is open, so you want to be careful about that. But it is possible to do a whole class on WhatsApp. All right, so the next thing you have to think about, once you've decided what platform you're going to use and how you're going to communicate with students, oh, you know what I should mention, because Ashley brought this up, you can use Remind, which is FERPA compliant, and do the same thing as with Twitter. So you could use Remind, set up a Remind account, and do it back and forth on Remind. Okay. Next thing you have to think about is, what do you have at home? Because nobody's going out and buying anything, and some of the things I've tried to buy for my teachers aren't coming in until the end of April, so they're not going to help me very much right now. What do you have? Most of us have a cell phone. Most of us have a computer. Hopefully that computer has a built-in web camera and microphone. If not, hopefully you have one. So you have to think about what equipment you have. That's the first thing. And then you have to think about, what do I need to know? There is an abundance of tutorials, videos, help sheets. Lots of things have come out recently specifically for educators. They've put lists on links for us. COABE has put out lists. So there are lots of things out there for you to look at once you've identified what tool you want to use and finding out more about how to use it. Zoom has some really great videos on how to use it for education, and so does WebEx. But then the most important thing is, you know for yourself that watching the video and actually doing it is kind of like telling someone how to drive a car and putting them behind the wheel for the first time. It's good to know, but it may or may not help you when you're driving. So the next most important thing to do is actually to practice with colleagues or friends or family. Great way to connect with your family during this time. And the tech-challenged friends, family, and colleagues are sometimes the best people to practice with, because they will have the kinds of problems your students will have, and you'll be able to practice talking them through how to troubleshoot those problems. Next thing you need to do is prepare your students. And before you can really get your students online, you need to know what kind of devices do they have, how does each student prefer to connect. So my wonderful office support person, Margarita, she went and called all of our students and asked them if they preferred to be contacted by text or by email, because if someone is connecting to Zoom by computer, it's easier to click the link in the email. If they're connecting by phone, it's easier to use the app and enter the number. So we needed to know how they wanted to connect. And, you know, we also have to consider things like, I asked them to download the Zoom app. And a couple of students who do not have Wi-Fi at home, do not have internet service at home, said they couldn't download the app because they're not on Wi-Fi. And there's a setting in their phones to allow downloads on metered connections. So we had to talk them through how to find that setting on their phone so that they could download the app. Onboarding students, being in contact with them, letting them know what's going on, and if necessary, having a practice run with them individually or in small groups to make sure that when class time starts, they have some idea. The screencast video was another idea. I had sent them screenshots earlier, and that may have helped a couple of people, but the video seemed to have helped a lot more people, so I'm suggesting that you do something like that. You're welcome to use my video. I'm probably going to redo it because it was really done very quickly and not very professionally. Okay, the most important thing once you get into your webinar or your chat or however you are going to communicate with your students, you need to have at least 2 methods of communication with your students. When I'm in a webinar, I also have my WhatsApp open on the desktop. Yes, WhatsApp has a desktop app. That way, if the students are not able to connect, they can send me a message on WhatsApp. If they have a chat and they can't figure out how to get the chat open, they all know how to use WhatsApp because we were using it previously. They can send that to me. I can send things to them to help them during the meeting if I need to. So that is one suggestion. Make sure you have 2 methods of communication open during your class time. Use clickable links, but you can also use shortened URLs. So the URL that I was showing you is a bit.ly link. Bit.ly takes a long link and makes it shorter. Should I show you how to use bit.ly? I'm asking for a yes, no out there. Okay. Denise, yes. So let's say I wanted to take this direct link to this post inside of links here. And I go to bit.ly. I have a free account. So here's my free account. You can see that I use it a lot because these are all the ones I've created over here on the left. I'm going to click create. I'm going to paste the longer URL, and I'm going to give a name that my students can actually type. Now, one thing to think about for bit.ly, it is case sensitive. So usually for my students, I do everything in lowercase. So I can say link ESL, and now it has a short link. And if I use that link, it takes me right back to there. So that's how you use the shorteners. They all pretty much work the same way. There's a goo.gl. Google has one. tinyurl has one. Sometimes they break. Somebody mentioned yesterday, if something happens on the website, it could change the actual address on the back end, and that's going to make it break, so you need to check them every now and then. And then you can generate QR codes like this one. If your students are used to using them, a lot of students in the textbooks now, there are QR codes for them to follow on their phones. So my students have gotten used to that, and I'm just going to show you really quickly the one that I use for that is called the QR code generator. So you just come in here, and let's say that I want to share this URL. This is a Google product, so I'm signed in. I see a lot of hands up, so we'll stop for breaks in just a second. Just paste your URL, and then you can save that for later. And you can put it on your website, or you can put it, you can send it to them directly, but I usually just put it on the website so they go to the website and then they can click on it. All right. What are the questions? I see a bunch of hands up.
Okay, I was wondering about, you said you can make the link shorter using Google. What was it that you said? Where do we go for that one? We're going to be using Google?
It's goo.gl.
That was my question. Thank you.
Shorteners. Oh, look, they changed it. Okay, now they're doing Firebase dynamic links. Okay, I've learned something new because I don't usually use this one. So apparently they've changed their shortener to Firebase dynamic links. What are the other questions? My hosts out there can help me out here.
Well, nobody seems to have questions. I think they're playing with raising their hands.
You know, that's not a bad thing to do with your students, is to have them practice the different tools to make sure that they know how to get to chat, how to post private messages if they want to, how to post public messages like they told you, to make sure that everyone is posted. So that's not a bad idea. It's always a good practice in the beginning of class to go through those things.
And I do have a couple of comments, and I think you've touched on this, but I don't even use Google. I am totally lost. I don't know enough to know what to ask.
Okay, so here's my best advice for you. Like I said, we're going to go a little deeper today because we're going past just to get used to. But I have teachers that are exactly in your situation. What I ask them to do is either scan or take pictures of what they normally use, put them in their computer, and share their screen. So all they're really going to do is use the same material they've been using. They're just going to use a digital copy of it and share their screen to work with their students. I'll also show you, I'm just going to talk about this later, but if you're teaching GED, for example, most of the books, by the way, have digital copies, but this is the, let me see if I can bring it up real quickly. So this is the Spanish GED text right here. And I thought I had Kaplan in here, but it may not be downloaded. For the regular GED, yeah, GERE Prep Plus. I have bought from Kindle, from Amazon, and so I have that in my Kindle reader, so I can actually show them the book as we're going through it if I need to. So for those of you who are just getting started, take a breath, And your main task for the next couple of weeks is to figure out how you take what you do on paper and turn it into something digital so that you can interact with students more or less in the same way you were doing it in the classroom. I hope that helps, because you can do this. I promise you can do this. It just takes practice.
We've got a question from Shondell. Like, go through all the tools. How can I do conversations?
Okay, let's wait till we get to lesson planning, Shondell, and I'll talk about that. And of course, you work with me, so if you really want to get into it, we can go deeper.
And then Rich has just made a note that the Notes app on an iPhone can be used as a scanner.
Right, and if you don't have that, you can use Cam Scanner is a great one because it'll turn your document into a PDF and you can email it to yourself directly from your phone. So that's an option. I'm not sure. Other things, if you have a printer at home, most of the printers are scanners, so you can scan it that way. Worst case scenario, you just take a picture on it on your phone and use the picture. Android, I use Cam Scanner, Shondell. That's what I have is Android. I am an Android girl. Any other questions coming in?
No, I think we can go on for now.
Okay. All right. Except Elsa has a question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I teach math, and I'm one of the people that's really pretty lost. And what would be a problem with my students doing the distance learning program that they were taught, and then just call me for help as opposed to a whole classroom online?
Okay, so the problem with that is you will not be able to record hours for that. They will only get their proxy hours. You won't have any direct contact hours with them. It's still a good idea to have an online class, and when we get to the lesson planning, I'm going to show you some ideas for doing math with the tools that are inside of the webinar so that you don't have to learn a whole lot of new things at one time.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's,
We do have, and I think we're going to get to this, but the question of how do you share your screen with the students while you speak to them?
Okay, most of the platforms will have a share option, and there are tutorials for each of the platforms that you can go because they're all a little different. But generally speaking, I'm just sharing my screen right now. I'm not doing a whole lot of fancy things with you guys. The only kind of fancy thing I did is because I want to make a point later about cameras. I had to figure a way around TCAL turning off all the video cameras, so I'll come back to that later. All right, so this is what we need to get into. Again, if you are just getting started, your main task is to get used to the platform you're going to be teaching on, whether you're teaching by telephone or by a web conference or by texting. You need to get used to how you're going to communicate with the students, get the students used to it before you try to add some of the things that I'm getting ready to show you. Are we all on the same page with that? Those of you like Denise and Sherry, the people that have been doing this a while, some of these tools you might want to start implementing. But again, you only want to implement 1 or 2 new things at a time because it's just overwhelming, not only for you, but for the students to have too much going on that's so different from what they were doing before. General advice, variety, especially if you're having, like we do, a 2-hour class online. Who wants to sit and listen to the teacher talk or lecture for 2 hours online? I can just create a video and have them watch that. So you need to have a bunch of different things that people can do. And then the other thing, before your class starts, especially if you're doing a webinar or a video conference of any kind, but also a text conference, you want to have yourself organized. So for example, I put all of the materials that I want to show you for today in a folder on my desktop. I do use 2 monitors. I've been doing this a long time, and that makes it easier for me. So I also take everything off of my monitor that they are seeing and put it on the other one. You want to see, just to give you an example here, this is what the other screen looks like. Blah. So I don't really want my students seeing that screen. So if you have the option to hide your stuff off of your desktop, at least temporarily, that's going to create a better experience. And then everything that I have that's content-based here is already in a folder. And then also on my bookmarks bar, I've created a folder for today, and I have the things that I wanted to show you in here. So that's the get organized piece. And then preparation. You may want to practice with a colleague, but most importantly here, I'm talking about mental preparation. You get up, you take a shower, you get dressed like you're going to the office or going to teach a class. If you try to teach in your pajamas, it's going to sound like you're teaching in your pajamas. So you want to make sure that you are in a professional frame of mind and a positive frame of mind so that you can communicate that to the students. So that's my general advice. Okay, I can. On this one, I'm going to share my meeting window. So in WebEx specifically, there's a button here that says share, and then up here I can also share. So either one works. On the toolbar down here, the little bit arrow up, most of them have that kind of symbol or something very similar for sharing, or up here, share content. In Zoom, it actually just has a big share button in the middle of the screen. Once you hit share, though, you have to tell it what you want to share. And this was kind of hard for my teachers. Usually it's going to be your screen. Most of my teachers do not have two screens, so it's just going to say screen. It's not going to say screen 1, screen 2. And then you're going to share that. So let's look back. We're going to talk about those 4 things. Visual, what are they going to see? What are they going to hear? What are they going to do? And how are we going to create community? Those are the main things we want to do in the online class. Think about when you're planning your lesson, what are they going to see? What are the students going to hear? What are they going to do? And how are they going to connect with you and with each other? So cameras. And one of the reasons that I keep doing this is I want to make a point. Most of the time you want to keep your cameras off because cameras use bandwidth, and students who are on their phones, they're going to find that that disrupts the audio and it makes it sound, and that's what they hear. So for the most part, I turn all the cameras off. One advantage to Zoom over WebEx is as the host, I can turn everybody's cameras off. In WebEx, you have to ask them repeatedly, please turn your camera off, please turn your camera off, please turn your camera off, or set it up so nobody can share their camera. But I like to see them once in a while, so I don't want to turn it off for everybody. So having the camera on, even as the teacher once in a while, it just puts that personal piece back into it, and I think that's important for the students right now. They need to feel connected. You don't have to keep it on the whole time. I don't want to keep it on the whole time. I don't want to look at myself. But I do want to make that connection with you and make sure, how do you feel when you see me as opposed to just hearing me? Can you guys comment on that? How do you feel differently when you see me rather than just hearing me? Yeah, it makes you feel a little better. There's a real person, not just a disembodied voice. So you don't have to turn it on for the whole time, but you do need to turn it on once in a while just so that the students can feel connected. Yeah. So that was the point. I wasn't able to make that point yesterday. I figured a way around it today. Let's talk about cameras. So there are some options for cameras. Document cameras, there are some cheap ones. Here's a $99 one, but it's up to April 18th. That's so much better. Yesterday it was April 30th. I might have to buy it now. So getting a cheap document camera right now may be a little challenging. If you have an Elmo in your office that you can go grab, or you have a Ladybug or any of the other kind of document cameras, then you would grab it. You can actually use the old webcams if you have them, and your camera as an external document camera. And I'm going to show you that here really quickly. You can buy these little mounts for overhead. This is what a lot of the people on YouTube that have YouTube channels do. They just mount another camera above their desk. And they're not as expensive. They run between, $10 and $20, $10 and $30, I guess. So that's another option for getting that overhead to show your documents on your desk. I like to show books sometimes. I forgot to make a copy of something, so I need to show a copy on my desk, and that's what I use the document camera for. I already talked a little bit about textbooks. In my counties, the students typically buy their textbooks, and so you could do a phone version of class. You'd have to take roll, of course, for TWC, but you would be able to keep that log and just tell them, we are on page 4. We're going to do exercise 3. You need, even for native speakers, if you're doing phone conference or you're doing web conference and you don't have audio, you need to speak a little slower. When I'm teaching ESL, I speak a lot more slowly for the beginners than I'm going to speak with you. And that's just logical because they're having to process things, especially if the cameras are off and without the visual cues, and that makes it more difficult. There are a lot of slideshows, so that's PowerPoint or Google Slides, that are already done for you. SlideShare is a great place to go look for them. Azar Grammar has slideshows for all of their books, for all of their chapters. this is what I'm doing right here. My only suggestion on slideshows is don't just do the slideshow. You need to do something else besides the slideshow. And I also, again, suggest that you not use animation, make each slide different, and actually not use the show that's set up like you would normally run on a projector, so that you can have a little more control. So here, if I needed to type something, for example, I can do it. If I'm running the show, it's much more difficult to do that, right? Does that make sense to everybody? How do you switch to a document camera on Zoom? Okay, I'm not sure this is going to work, but we'll try. So on Zoom, if I share here, one of the options in advanced is connect from second camera, and that will open up your document camera. I don't actually have to do that because the document camera I'm using, HoverCam, has an application on the desk, and I just show the application from the desk. That's this little icon down here. So that's the one I'm using. Images. Think about what you can show students. So in my preparation for today, I had this folder. We had a lesson, Fun and Fundamentals, if anybody took that workshop. And we collected a bunch of stock photos. So these are not copyrighted. These are stock photos that we had purchased. And so you can actually do write-arounds or discussions, conversations based on this. So somebody want to tell me what's going on in this picture? This is my favorite picture of the whole series. So if she is unhappy, right? And so my students, they would actually be talking about this. The lady is upset. Yes. Why is she upset? So then she's not happy about something. Does anybody have an idea about why she might be upset? He just said something unacceptable, right? He did something and he knows it. They always know it. Here was my solution was that the photographer is very beautiful and he's flirting, right, Denise? That was it. I'm thinking it's a female photographer and he is flirting with her. And this is another one that we all can relate to right now. Does anybody feel like this? They were stock pictures, Jennifer. We had purchased stock pictures. There are some free stock pictures that you can get to, but I had collected and I was trying to get some that had a lot of diversity in them. So I was trying to find pictures that my students could relate to, different kinds. So just trying to remember diversity as well and being culturally sensitive and have them write or talk about those things. If you're looking for royalty-free images, there are some here. Pix4Learning is probably the best one. Pix4Learning.com. I'll just grab that and put it in chat for you. If you don't have a subscription service, that may be a good place to start. And also Wikimedia Commons has pictures that you can find. So that's images. Videos, of course. Videos are always fun. And in Zoom, you just have to make sure that you click the button at the bottom that says Share Computer Audio. It's a little trickier in WebEx, but I will try and see if I can get this part of this video and see how you can hear it. Hola, señorita. ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Mike. Me llamo Mike. Okay, that's as much bad Spanish as I can handle at one time. So that's something else you can think about, what videos you can use. Of course, there's Khan Academy videos, there's TED Talks, there's all kinds of videos. You can make your own videos. You can have students make videos. So that's also something you could think about doing. Flipgrid, somebody find the web address for Flipgrid. Flipgrid is something students can use on their phones to create videos, share them to a class folder, and you can use them in class to talk about it. So Flipgrid's another good one. Again, for the beginners, because I want to make sure that I'm not overwhelming the people who are just getting started. What is your main goal for the next 2 weeks? The only difference, get set up and get used to it. That's it. That's all I'm asking you to do. You can think about these things later. This is being recorded, so you can come back and look at it and think about all the other ideas. But this is for some of the people who already have the basics down. So in Zoom, if you're doing this, if you can have optimized for full screen video clip and share computer sound. That way, they're hearing the sound from the computer. When you do that, it is important to turn your microphone off, or they will hear everything twice. Of course, you can share documents. Again, like I said, for those who are just getting started, where you want to start is those documents that you would normally use in class. So take a picture of them or scan them, have them saved in a folder on your desktop, and then when you go to class, let me see, I have been doing this a while, so if I go to my Dropbox curriculum folder, I have lessons on just about everything, including math worksheets. So let's say I want to do a math worksheet, balancing equations, find someone who, this is a ESL one, but that's okay. And then I can have them, oh, this was chemistry, sorry, that's not math. Anyway, you get the idea. You can just actually, free probability word problems. You can just, this is Teachers Pay Teachers. Does everybody know about Teachers Pay Teachers? Yes, yes, yes. If you don't, go check it out. They always send you 10 free resources, and then you can buy some really cheap things that other teachers have made, which is really nice. So this is a probability worksheet that they've created. Of course, if I'm sharing it with students, I need to make it bigger so they can see it on their phone. Okay, so you can keep all your stuff organized, and that's going to help you. And then, of course, you can visit websites. I am going to show you one of my favorite things to do with students here. Let me get back in here. We can take tours. You can take a virtual tour of the Louvre. Isn't that great? We can look around. I can go to the Napoleon Hall, and there are literally hundreds of free tours, virtual tours that you can take for museums and zoos and all kinds, cities even. There's all kinds of virtual tours out there. So you can talk to the students about these kinds of things. It'd be great if you were teaching history in a GED class to talk about some of this stuff. You know, the Winged Victory right here. This is a great statue. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that question. What was it?
Can they use these, can they see these tours using their phones?
Yes, because the phones have browsers on them, but usually when I'm talking about an in-class activity, I'm sharing it. They're seeing what I'm seeing on their phone. So websites is another visual tool that you can use. If I'm doing a worksheet, so just like in class, I might have them working on a series of problems or a reading, and that's on the screen, and then yeah, I'm going to be quiet and give them time to do that. I don't have to be talking the whole time, just like I don't talk the whole time in the classroom. Okay, so let's talk about auditory. Microphones and headsets. Of course, if you don't have a good microphone or headset now, you might have trouble getting them, although Best Buy is doing curbside pickup. You can get cheap microphones. The microphones that are built into laptops these days are not bad. But if you are hosting, I have two recommendations. Be on a wired connection if at all possible, and get good equipment. It's going to make a difference. The one that I use is a Yeti. It's like this. And the reason I use it actually is when I was using WebEx, you can change the type of microphone. So if you know anything about microphones, this is called a cardioid, and that's what most people use, so it's mainly listening to me. If I do it with those two circles or the figure 8, then it's listening to both sides of the microphone, and then I can share the audio from my speakers without as much difficulty. I don't have to turn the microphone around for them to hear clearly. But there's all kinds of microphones that you can get. Some of them start at $10 that are really good. And then you can also use headsets. The echoing issue, if you guys have heard about the echoing issue, I'm sure you've been in webinars where there's an echo. What causes that typically is that the microphone is picking up the sound from your speakers and feeding it back to the participants. So that's when, if my students have that, I have a set of headphones available that I can put on if they're getting an echo from me from some reason. Typically with this microphone, because it is a cardioid mic, they don't have that issue because it's mainly listening to me right in front of it. But I do have it available in case that comes up. That's one of the reasons you keep the audio off. Of course, the other reason is so that you're not listening to their TV, their kids, their dogs, their husbands, wives, whatever in the background. Another reason to keep the videos off. Oh my goodness, this week one of my students turned her video on. She is lounging in the bed. Yeah, there was a married couple in the class. They left, so we had to have a discussion about making sure the cameras stay off. Live and learn. Keep going.
So, Glenda, we have a couple of comments and questions. Could we go ahead and address those?
Sure, go ahead.
I think this one's important, so that's why I wanted to, and apologize for interrupting. This is from Deborah. She says, I'm worried about how much data this will take on my students' phones.
Wonderful question.
Yeah, a lot of them use Cricket.
Yeah. I have good news for you. Cricket is an AT&T product, by the way. So all of the service providers, as of yesterday, are not charging overage fees for data. As of yesterday, Cricket and AT&T, I know for sure. Spectrum is not doing it. I haven't seen any. There was a rule passed, and all of them are trying to comply with it, that they will not disconnect phones for non-payment for the next 60 days, and they will not charge overage for the next 60 days.
Okay, great. That's awesome news.
Which means also if they have the hotspot ability and they do have a device like a tablet that's larger or a computer, if you can teach them how to use their phone as a hotspot, then they can do that as well.
So then Joseph has a question. Is Zoom easiest on a phone or other tool for the student being able to participate in the class session?
Easiest is WhatsApp because most of them are using it anyway. But you can't do live video feeds on those except for one-on-one. And the others, they're all apps. So you do need to do a tutorial like I did the video for my students or screenshots to make sure they know how to use the app. Apart from that, they're all fairly the same as far as the level of difficulty to use them.
So then we have a question. This refers to the not charging overages.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a link we can send students on this?
Oh,
Would that be up to the individual phone provider?
I'd have to Google the actual news. Yeah, it was a news thing, and then I got an email about it from my service provider saying according to the law. I don't know if I erased that email. Let me see. If I find it, I will send it to you, Beth, and you can send it out.
Okay, thank you.
But it was from AT&T, and AT&T and Cricket are the same company, and they are definitely not charging overages. But they referenced a rule that came out yesterday. So almost everybody else I've seen before the rule came out was doing the same thing, not canceling or cutting anybody's phones off for 60 days for non-payment and not charging overages.
But they may need to go to their individual provider's site.
Just to be sure. Mm-hmm.
And we do have a question. Could you do a homework assignment on WhatsApp, but class mainly on Zoom?
Yeah, a lot of my homework assignments go through WhatsApp. Let me get one of my classes up here. Look for this one. So these people are very active all the time. But I'm going to get back. I have to get after them talking after class and get back to what we were working on. Hold on. Let's see. We were working on. Hey, like that picture. Isn't that great? This is Game of Thrones Corona edition. Okay. Okay. Let's imagine that I'm going to send them homework and I just attach a file. I'll give them something to read. They'll be like, "What are you doing?" Let's give them something to read. Let's do reading practice. Let's send them a story. Send them a story. Let's send them Amelia Earhart. Now, I can just send it to them and say, please be ready to discuss this tomorrow. I could also give them, thanks. This is just an example for some other teachers. Before they start going crazy. Okay. That's just an example, okay? So you can send audio, you can see PDF. This is somebody's asking what I'm using. This is my computer at home. I recommend that the teacher teach from a computer, not from their phone. It is very difficult to do on the phone. That was WhatsApp, Jennifer. I keep my students connected on WhatsApp. Okay, so yes, you can send homework, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that at the very end here, about what to do after class, before class. Online content, of course, you can share video, local files. You can share your own audio from your own computer. You may need to adjust sound for beginners. And there's a couple of ways to do that. YouTube does. Most of the videos have speed control, so you can slow them down on YouTube directly. But if you're doing audio, if you can get Audacity, which is a free program that you can download, over here on the right is the playback speed option. So if I import a audio here, okay, if I do that, then I can actually, this is the normal sound of this. That, of course, would be too fast for my students, so I can slow it down a little bit. Of course, that sounds a little wonky, so what I prefer to do is actually use Kara Fun. Show you that one. You're lost? I'm just saying sometimes, like, if I'm doing a listening thing from Standout or Ventures or Interchange, one of the textbooks, because I'm not in the room with them, sometimes that audio is just a little too fast for them. So I will pull it into another program so that I can slow it down. This is one of those advanced things. So if you're a beginner, just ignore everything I just said, come back and watch the video later.
While we're stopped, though, we do have another question. Could you download the whole stories from biography.com to WhatsApp?
I would probably give them the link. WhatsApp is on their phones. I don't have any reason to send them something I can send them to a link.
And then we had a question from Sherry that you may address as we finish, but it's kind of the big question, I think. And I think maybe it's to everyone, but also to you. Do you prefer Zoom over WebEx, and why?
Again, I think that's a personal preference. I know Anne Marie prefers WebEx or seems to. I prefer Zoom, and I will tell you why. One is because the free version has breakout rooms. I have the paid version, which also has reporting, which makes attendance a little easier. I find that it is a little easier for my students, but the main reason is the pro version. It was about, to get breakout rooms on WebEx, I needed to pay about $500 a year. I pay about $150 a year for Zoom and have the breakouts. So it was a money thing when I made the switch.
Is there a fee for setting up a WhatsApp account as a business account?
I don't know if they're charging for the business account or not. I've never used it. I've always used the personal account, and it works fine. You set up groups for your classes, and then it works.
There's a question, so we don't record. I'm not 100% sure what that's in reference to. If you want to expand on that question. And then we have one, do ventures have audio vision that go with their textbooks?
Almost all of the textbooks across content have support materials, including audio and visual or online teacher presenter tools. You would need to contact your representative for the publisher to get that information.
And then how long can the audios be if you use Audacity?
Audacity is actually a sound editor, so you can do very long sound on there, but you don't really want to. I mean, most of the time with audio clips for my class, it's 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay, and this question I think is the expanded. So for the free Zoom, we can or can't record. How do they review the lesson?
You can record in the free Zoom. Then you'll have to set up a YouTube channel or someplace to post them because they will be too big to send through most other resources. And
then we have another question. And before I read the question, I do want to let everybody know, because a lot of this is about Zoom and WebEx. So we do have a session this afternoon at 2 about WebEx and how to use it. And we're repeating that session Monday at 2. And then we have another Zoom session Tuesday at 2. So if you're interested in finding out more about how they work, feel free to join us for one of those. This question, Zoom is easy to download and host. Can you briefly explain WebEx scenario to download and host?
I didn't have any. It's the same. To me, it's the same. It's download a program and install it. So for me, it really doesn't make any difference. It's just what you prefer and what you get used to. Again, though, even going to the webinars, it's like somebody telling you how to ride a bike or telling you how to drive. You're going to have to practice. Before you have students in your classroom, I strongly recommend you practice, and preferably with somebody who is not tech savvy.
So then, is there an educator WebEx version?
You'd have to Google it. I think there is, but I'm not a salesperson for WebEx, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think there is a free, that's free right now anyway, for WebEx. And yes, I'll put those dates and times in the chat, but they are on the calendar in the PD portal. Okay.
Okay, so let's go back to lesson planning. You guys are really thinking about this, and I appreciate the fact that you're thinking about what do I need to do to get the webinar up and running. And I'm so thankful that TCAL has those webinars coming up for you, and of course they're going to be recorded, and I know they're going to turn them around through post-production as fast as they can so they can have the recorded sessions up. Meantime, there are tutorials for both WebEx and Zoom and GoToMeeting and Adobe Connect, and all of them have tutorials that you can check out. And then once you've checked out the tutorials, you need to practice. So sitting in a chair for 2 hours, boring. You want to make sure that your students are doing something, like you guys are using the chat. That's what I want my students to be doing also. You can also let them use the annotation tool. So let me talk about this for just a second, because I want to talk about the basics for the math teachers, specifically for the math teachers. I'm going to share a whiteboard, and I'm going to use my annotation tools. If this was text, I could just write, but in that case, I usually use a Word document. But if I am actually going to try to teach math, then I'm going to have to draw with my mouse for the most time. So if I say like 3 squared times 4 equals, so you can actually support the students by doing this. So all of the tools, all of the platforms have a whiteboard option. There are also actual apps and sites on the web that are whiteboards for teachers that you can use. Thank you for my beautiful mouse writing. I appreciate that. But my beautiful, it's not all that beautiful. So let me share something else with you that you can do for math that I really like, that I encourage my math teachers to do. I'm going to open a Word document. Okay, now I went too fast yesterday, so you guys let me know if I'm going too fast, okay? Inside of Word, these are the tabs across the top. I'm going to go to the Insert tab. On the far right, under the Symbols section, there's Equation. Everybody see that? I'm going to click on Equation, and then over here on the left, it has Tools. It has Equation and Tools. Now, I can try and do my equation using these symbols, fractions and all that stuff. I find that's a little hard. So what I prefer to do with my beautiful mouse writing, which isn't so beautiful, is this one, Inc Equation on the far left, Inc Equation. When I click Inc Equation, it comes up with this grid that I can write in. So that one that I just was writing, 3 squared, I don't remember if I said times or I think I said times, 4. Now, it didn't get the 3 squared right? Do you see that? It converted it, but it got 3 squared wrong. So I'm going to select this and see if it comes. Nope, it doesn't have what I want there. Let me try erase. I'll erase it and try it again. It doesn't like my 3, I think. Let's try writing a different 3. Let's try writing this 3. Aha, there we go. So that does make it a little easier if you can't write very well with the mouse and you don't have a graphic tablet so you can write with a stylus. You can just type it. Somebody just said that. You can, but you have to use these up here. It's just much harder. 3, let me see, I'm going to put a common fraction, 1/3 plus, I don't know where it's plus, divided by, oh no, I don't want to divide it by there. I think this is clunkier for me. That's why I don't like using it. That's why I prefer to draw it. You could get used to it if I practice with it. I'm not usually teaching math unless somebody's like sick. But if you practice with it, you would probably get better. But it is available in Word, and I think that's a nice thing to know. Yeah, thank you, Austin. It gets very easier with practice. Okay, the other thing you can do for math, if you have the document camera, okay, so I'm going to put my document camera back up here. But I am going to switch the view. This record, by the way, that's how I recorded that little video. I'm going to rotate the view. Let me see if that's right. Let me put a piece of paper under it. Oh, that's upside down, so I need to rotate it again. So if you have a document camera, or you can mount your phone overhead and can share it, yeah, you can use it just like an overhead projector. So I can do that 3 squared times 4, just like that. One of my teachers last night in the GED class, we talked about this, and what she decided to do is she actually logs into the Zoom room with the audio on her computer, but she also logs in on her phone. And then she shares her phone screen when she wants to show pieces of a math problem or something like that. I thought that was pretty clever. It works. You have to sometimes think of ways around. Another thing, you can give annotation to students. So if I'm reading a document, for example, and I want them to mark all the verbs, or I want them to underline the main idea, there are annotation tools for the participants, and you can actually let them draw on the screen. I think they're turned off for you guys for this webinar, but my students, they have access. Another thing you can do is polls. WebEx and Zoom and Adobe Connect and I think GoTo also. They all have polls built into them, but they are kind of limited. They usually are single answers or multiple answers, so you can choose one or choose two or more. I like to use Poll Everywhere. So because in Poll Everywhere, I can actually create a poll. This is my free version, by the way. And look at what I can do. I can do multiple choice, sure. I can also do a word cloud, so they can just respond with one word and it makes a cloud. I can do question and answers and have them vote up and vote down the questions and answers. I can do a clickable image, which would be great for IETs where we're trying to do parts of the body or parts of an engine or something like that. Open-ended, where they can just communicate with me. There are competitions. And the one I like to use, Brainstorm, there's just a bunch of them. You have to play with them. But the one that I really like is ranking. And this is where students can vote up and down what's most important to you, what's least important to you. So for example, the one that we did on my class on Saturday, let's see if it's open right now. So here's the poll, best things to do under quarantine. And I can clear it for every class and it'll save their responses. When I activate it, then all I do is go to pollev.com. I forgot the .com. pollev.com. And this is what the students see. And then to vote, they click on it. Oh, clear last response. They click on it, and then they have to move it down or up, wherever they want it to be. So it's a really good little tool if you want to include some more sophisticated polls in your class. The built-in polls I typically use for quizzes. And then games. Let's talk about games. Everybody loves to play, and there's things you can play, all kinds of games. There are PowerPoint templates that you can use for all. This is just one example. There's Jeopardy, there's Family Feud, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Wheel of Fortune. There's all kinds of them. And when you're playing online, it kind of looks like this. So Christmas Jeopardy. Who would like to pick a category? Songs. Okay, songs for how much? 100? Just as an example. What is the song that has a one-horse open sleigh in the line? What is Jingle Bells? Remember, this is Jeopardy, so you have to answer in the form of a question. So all of you are wrong. No, I'm just kidding. Depends on what. Yeah, there you go, Nadine. So it just depends on what level of students I'm working with. If I make them do it has to be a question thing. And then you click that and come back, and you go to another category, and you can keep score for them. Where do you get this? So there's templates. You can Google, literally Google templates, game templates for teachers, and then you find a bunch of them. Find one you like, put your own information in it, and it's ready to go. But basically, they've already programmed the skip to this slide, come back to this slide, the hyperlinking. They've already done all that for you, so all you have to do is play the game and change the content. That's over your head. Don't do it. Honestly, there are a million other things you can do. And then, of course, sharing. So students need to feel connected. One of the ways they feel connected is by sharing what's going on with them, too. So you can have them do projects and presentations, and they can actually share from within here. It is important that about every hour or so like this, I tell my students, okay, let's stretch. Put your hands up, and let's stretch a little bit. And I think that's important. There was another question you said?
Yeah, this one's from Mizuki. It's kind of a technical question.
Mm-hmm.
So can you show us how to use both screens, like the teacher you mentioned did?
Oh, that I use 2 monitors?
I think that's what you're referring to.
So you have 2 monitors at home. I use 2 32-inch TVs because monitors are expensive and TVs are cheap. And so I have, I don't know, I can probably show you. Let's see. Share.
Was it the phone and the desktop? That's the one.
Oh, the phone and the desktop. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So she logged in on her desktop with the audio. She logged in on her phone without the audio. When she wanted to show something, she used her phone overhead as a camera and shared from her phone. Our classes are 2 hours, Nadine, except for my Microsoft Office class. Okay. So breaks. Okay, anything else? And listen, I know this is a lot, and when you go to the Zoom meeting, there's going to be even more. So I just have to keep saying this. You're going to start with something basic that you're comfortable with, get very comfortable with it, and then you can start adding other things. Dropbox. Okay, so I use Google Drive and I use Dropbox. Typically, I use Google Drive with my class because it's connected to Google Classroom. I use Dropbox a lot of times with professional development because some organizations have blocked Google. Okay? So that Dropbox, you can create a folder and then share the folder with your students. And Dropbox has gotten a little bit better. You can actually collaboratively work in Dropbox. So if I had a file and I wanted to share with you my presentations folder, for example, I could open a, oh, this one's empty. Look at that. That's always good. I could open something here and I could share it with you right from my Dropbox. Just share the link, share, and then I can create link. Did some of you actually take the poll? That looks different than it was before. Okay.
There's a question. Can you also talk about how to do breakouts?
Okay, so I'm still sharing screen, right? So you have to have it set up in your parameters before you get started. That's a whole other issue, and there are tutorials on this, so I don't want to go too far. You basically just click breakout. Breakout, you create the number of rooms that you want. Of course, I don't have any participants in this meeting. You can do it automatically by assigning them or automatically let the computer randomly assign them, or you can do it manually by putting them in the groups you want. Click Create Rooms, and then everybody gets an invitation to go. But there are video tutorials, and the Zoom people will be able to talk to you about that in their session. All right, let's talk about that social thing again. With everybody being so stressed and insane right now, it's very important that we feel connected. So using the cameras occasionally, making sure that at the beginning of class especially you have time for check-ins. How's everybody doing? Do you need anything? Is there anybody who can help? This person's out of toilet paper. This person's out of meat. This person needs eggs. Whatever it is, and see if you can help each other like that. I think that, you know, being intuitive to their needs and making sure that that connection is there is going to help them continue to come to class. I know that because one of my classes that I've been teaching online has been going 4 or 5 years, and those ladies have really connected. They're professional women to the point that they have visited each other. We even arranged all of us to meet in Paris a couple of years ago. So you develop this strong sense of community, and I think that's important. Make sure the content is relevant. The GED teacher on Monday was teaching about economy and social studies, and she taught about intangible and tangible goods that may be necessary to resolve the current crisis. So she associated the lesson with what's going on in the world. I think that's important also for our adult learners. Also, we are not going to get rid of collaborative learning. That's one of the reasons I like the breakout rooms. I want you two to go in this room and talk about this. I want you two to go in this room and talk about that, just like I would do in class. And then as a teacher, I can pop into each room and see what they're doing and answer questions, just like I would do in class. You can also use things like Google Docs and Sheets and Slides. I'm going to go here. So let's see. So the fun thing about Google is if it's not blocked for your organization, that is, I can create a document and I can immediately put the link in my webinar test. Okay, and get the link. I want to make it so you can edit, copy the link, and then I can just go over to chat, post it, and then you guys can come into my document and you can actually write. The difficult part with Google Docs is if you come into the room, you have to pay attention to where everybody's cursors are so that you're not writing over each other. So a lot of times I'll use a Google Sheet, which is like Excel, or I'll insert a table and I'll say, okay, panda right here, and I don't know what kind of bird that is. Let's see what is this? Ibex right here, and then I'll have this way. That way they don't write over top of each other. That just makes it a little easier. But I've also done it with write around, so I'll have one person write, and then I'll call on the next person to write, then I'll call on the next person to write, and then that way I know that only one person is writing at a time. There are some other cool tools in Google. So I mentioned Sheets and presentations, but there are also things like, of course, Google Forms for quizzes, but here, Google Drawings. So you can actually just have them draw on the board. Hello. And I guess you could use this for math too, but I usually just use the board that's in there. So there's Google Drawings, and then there's also Google Jamboard. Jamboard is kind of cool. You can put Post-it notes up and share it. So I can put Post-it notes. What am I going to do tomorrow? And you can have different colors for different students, and then it's kind of like a sticky board. You can just stick things around. You can add pictures. You can draw or use the laser. But it's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun place to go. So you just have to play with Google. And Google has, if you Google Training for Educators, oh my goodness, okay. The Teacher Center has all kinds of ideas from other teachers that they have used. So just check it out and see the kinds of things that they have suggested that other teachers have done. Another favorite is Padlet, P-A-D-L-E-T. And I like Padlet a lot because you can basically create a board. Here's a KWL chart. What do we know? What do we want to know? And what we learned. This was a beginning ESL class. So this is what we came up with. They are from Africa. They are very tall. Okay. What do we want to know? Where do they live? What do they eat? How do they sleep? Etc. So a simple KWL chart. You can do just a basic shelf and let people put whatever they want in it. So to make one, after you get your free account, you make a Padlet, you choose a template. You can do timelines, maps, back channel, which is just them talking to you, columns, which is what I usually use, bricks, grids. Anyway, you can do any kind of activity you want. And then it comes over here. You can rename it and all that stuff. And then I have my thing here, so I need to add a date, 1969. I was born. Okay. And so then it's going to show up on the timeline. So if you're doing a timeline activity, but there's bunches of things you can do with that. So those are some collaborative tools that you can use. Reading together, Breaking News English is one of my favorites. It saves time as an ESL teacher, but there's others, Common Lit, Digital ReadWorks, Newsy Those, there's a couple of Tech Intels already posted in the PD portal on those. I don't think we've done Breaking News English, about how to use them for collaborative reading. Digital scavenger hunts and web quests. So I can send students off on their phones to find certain things or to answer questions. That's what that is. In groups usually, so they're talking to each other. And then you can use social media groups. Facebook groups work well. Pinterest. So I don't think a lot of people know that you can do, sorry, here she is, well, she was good for most of the time. Here's the group boards. So you can actually create a group boards, and I've done this with your vacation, your favorite vacation, dream vacation, and so they were able to share their ideas for developing it, or their ideal classroom, learning site, something like that. So group boards are useful also. Anything you can do where they're working together.
Glenda, this is Beth. While you're showing the web, oh, well, I wasn't fast enough. Veronica, I missed the URL for where you went for the games. Can you tell us where you went for that? And Glenda, if you're speaking, we're not hearing you. Okay.
Okay, I think she's calmed down a little bit. Yeah, so I just Googled templates for games for teachers, and I picked one to share with you guys. But I can go back to that one and put that one in the chat for you. The only reason I picked this one is it actually had reviews of the different templates. And what I just did, I have to say, my mantra for years has been, what's the difference between an online tech-savvy teacher and someone who's not? I expect something to go wrong, and it doesn't bother me when it does. My dog starts barking, okay, I'll start writing. The computer freezes, I'm gonna restart the computer, I'm gonna go to WhatsApp and let my students know what's gonna happen. So I think that is an important thing to think about. It's not gonna be you as a new person, you don't know what you're doing. You're just gonna, everybody who teaches online, we have things come up. The audio is awful, the connection's weak, the computer goes down. And you just have to have a backup plan for that and not get flustered when it happens. And I think it's important also as you're, fumbling, it's going to be ugly the first couple of times. It's not going to be real smooth, probably. Maybe it will. But just letting the students know, hey, we're all learning this. We're going to do this together. Bear with me while I figure out all these tools. I promise it's going to get there. Okay, so after class, this is WhatsApp, and I just think this one's cute because my student here, she posted about the apocalypse. She said, look, as soon as I turned it back on, I think dogs just have ESP for this stuff. So what I expected was anarchy and zombies, and what I got was a home office and no toilet paper. So I thought that was cute. So they talk a lot between classes. You can also use learning management systems. There are a bunch of them out there. Google Classroom is good. Schoology is pretty easy. It's similar to Facebook style, and so students get used to it very easily. You can use a Dropbox folder. Canvas has a bunch of different things. Course Sites I use with my GED students that are college-bound because it's a Blackboard product, and so they get used to using Blackboard. If the college is using Canvas, of course, you want to start on Canvas. All that to say, you want to have something for them to do between classes. That's what I'm trying to say mainly. You want to make sure that you have them connected, that they have discussion boards, that they're able to talk to each other and talk to you between class sessions. Okay, so finally, if you are new, the one that's barking is this dog right here, Ladybug. She was 6 weeks old, and I knew I was going to have a problem when she attacked a Great Dane. So you don't have to run with the big dogs right out of the gate. You can just take it slow, pick a few tools, get used to your platform, get your students used to the platform, get used to the new normal, and then start adding things little by little. Add a collaborative activity, or add the breakout rooms, or try to add music or anything like that when you get comfortable. So you wait until you get a little comfortable, then you want to change things up. We're learning. It's a learning curve for all of us. We're all trying to figure this out, so just look at it as a great adventure and try to enjoy the ride. Yeah, I have a professional Dropbox. I also have professional Google Space because I teach online so much, but yeah, there are limits to some of those things. So you have to decide how much you want to keep there. Your dog's confused, Nadine? Yes, okay. All right, so finally, if you need to get a hold of me, grose@communityaction.com. This is actually this bit.ly. Let me see if I can copy that for you and put it in chat. Those were actually my notes. So I'm not even going to say that I know that the typing or the grammar is perfect, but those are basically the same kinds of things that I covered in this session, just in a text form. When I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you guys. And so this may be something you want to share with colleagues or, work on yourself. Okay. Does anybody have any more questions? Let's see if I can get this down a little bit.
The only thing that I noticed that we didn't miss was someone had a question about GoToMeeting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I am not an expert on GoToMeeting. I've only used it a couple of times, but I am sure there are videos out there.
And then a request, how can we review this again? You're going to need to give us a little bit of time. We have to put the recording through post-production, and we have a lot of webinars in the hopper right now, so it's going to take us a little while to get it up, but we will eventually get it up into the PD portal as a curriculum where you can go back and review it. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that my students are living in a time of uncertainty and dealing with layoffs and probably loss of income. So I will try to make this fun for them. I'll bring in lots of social and emotional learning too. Let's see if we have any other questions.
Yeah, that emotional piece right now is going to be critical. Plus, people who are, especially people who are on lockdown and stay safe, work safe, the online class is actually a little bit of an escape from just sitting around the house and thinking about what's not happening.
Those are all the questions that I see at this point. We've got about 5 minutes left, so if you do have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. You've been a really good group, and we really appreciate some of the really thoughtful questions. And you recommend a web camera?
Web cameras typically just look at the resolution. As long as it's above, about 760, it's probably going to be fine. Logitech is what I usually go with because they're cheaper, but Microsoft has some good ones too. This is actually not a web camera. This is my document camera. It's a hover cam. And so that works too, anything like that. I was looking up at my web camera, which is what I do in class.
All right, so Juanita is still a little confused, but it's okay. We're all in this together.
Yeah, it's going to be confusing for a while, but it gets better. Oh my goodness, that one teacher that I was talking about, his first class on his GED class, which was math, online, when we got on ahead of time to get him set up, he just kept saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And by the end of the class, he had taught multiplying, mixed numerical fractions, and he had done a great job doing it. So if he can do it, anybody can do it. It's going to be okay.
Okay, I've got one. Do I need to download an app to use my phone as a document camera?
I don't know, because the way we were using it was logging into Zoom and sharing screens. I'd have to research that. But the YouTube podcast people, they already know. So there's a video on YouTube about how to do it, I am sure.
Do you count WhatsApp hours as hours, and how?
Okay, so text, remind, WhatsApp, anything that's text-based, Facebook, as long as you start the class, have everybody check in, and you have continuous engagement over a period of time, say an hour, hour and a half, then you take roll, you take a screenshot if you can, and you count those as direct hours. It cannot be asynchronous where you write at 9 a.m. and they respond at 5 or the next day. You have to be in a live class situation.
Is it better to keep the time as the classroom face-to-face?
I am. I think that's easier for the students. Although I am going to check with my morning class because of the morning picking up food from the schools, if we need to start that a little bit later so they can get that taken care of.
And then, are you familiar with Blackboard?
Yes, I have to teach on Blackboard for A&M. I also am an adjunct here. So Course Sites is the free version of Blackboard. And Blackboard also has a lot of tips and tricks for teachers. Is that it, guys? No more questions? I'm looking over here. Yeah.
That's all I see. I want to just thank you, Glenda, for doing such a nice job. This was
Hi, everybody.
so timely, and we really needed it, and so thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad I could help.
All right, everyone, have a great weekend.
Simone's hand up. Does she have a question?
There's some of them that had their hands up the whole time.
Oh, okay.
Robert was asking about Blackboard again. All right. Well, thank you, guys. I will leave the room open for just another moment to see if we can have anything else come up. But you guys can log off, and I appreciate you.
The Blackboard question, I will tell you that Blackboard is assuming that you pretty much are a professor and that you've got time slotted to create a classroom environment. It is a lot more intensive, labor intensive, than some of the other learning management systems, but it does a lot more. So my best suggestion is start basic create folders for your materials and get your materials in there, and then you can play with the other tools that are in Blackboard later.
Yes, someone's asking about certificate for this training. Yes, there will be a certificate available on your transcript in the portal. Again, you need to give me a little time because it'll take I got to let the usage report run, and then I have to turn in attendance, and we have to mark attendance, and we're working with webinars this week that are having hundreds of people in them, so it's taking us just a little time, but we will get it in there. All right, thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close the room.
Bye, Beth. Bye, Krista. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Glenda.
Thank you, Glenda. It was great.